Luckily, I have been asked by different people 2-3 different stories. So I will finish off Katie. Katie coming to Italy, being in Italy.
One second.
She,
One second. Just so you know, we have a machine back here, those high pitched sounds that come through with feedback. We have a machine here that catches the feedback and shuts it off. So if you hear that, don't panic. The more of those little high pitched things we catch back here, the louder I can make our microphone. So just let me
okay.
like that.
Yeah, it's hard to hear.
Catch it.
High tech. So high tech.
Okay. Are we okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay? Okay. Yes, yes.
We'll do it again.
Katie told me, I will meet you in Milan on the 1st of August. I begged her. I said, Katie, no, not the 1st of August. On the 1st of August, all the workers in Italy move their families to the seashore, and it will be a madhouse. All the trains and all the buses and all the cars. Please at least come on the 2nd of August. So I had a dear friend in those days, a man called, a Baba lover called Rusty Bostwick, born in California, but was in a moment of transition in his life. He was traveling through Europe, through Greece, and we connected in Assisi in such a way that he came to my farm in Paradiso. He was a bit lost, and I was restless anyway. So our friendship was very deeply connected with Baba and Baba's love, but in action. Because of my difficulties with welcoming the Mandali, which for me was an extraordinary responsibility for who I was then, I asked him, would he help? And he did. He traveled with me. So we traveled to Milan, waited for Katie. And then, I can't remember, because I remember going by train, but we had a car, and we started traveling with Katie. And many, many different things happened. After being in Venice together, when I remember we were in St. Mark's Square, and I was sort of the elegant lady going around choosing restaurants. And one day, in front of St. Mark's, Katie said to me, Valeria, now you can go to the toilet. And I said, Katie, for goodness sake, can I choose when to go? I didn't know much about obedience. But anyway, we traveled to Portofino. And there were several other Baba lover friends who wanted to join us along the way. Some had a few days, some others longer days. So I remember Margaret Carpenter, who was a dear friend who lived in England. She came with us. We arrived in Portofino. I knew of a lovely hotel, small, like an old villa that had been turned into a hotel. I'd been there before. The owner knew me. So we arrived in the evening. We were tired. We had traveled. And it was a magnificent evening. August evening. The air was smooth, soft. There was a full moon. So we put Katie into her room, which she would have shared with Margaret Carpenter. And then I had my room, Rusty had his room. And we said, Katie, please wait for us. We need to go for a little walk. We've been sitting in the car for so long. Please wait for us. She said, well, go. So we walked. Portofino is a splendid little place. We walked to the lighthouse, long path. And the lighthouse is suspended on the cliffs. It's a place where You know, we all know the episode where Baba's close ones went with him, and some of them were stuck in the steep ravine going down to the rocks, and Baba had to go and call somebody and a rope. And that's another story, and I wasn't there. But we were on this point with the lighthouse, sea on both sides, umbrella pines on top of us, total silence. We were alone, the three of us with Baba. We completely lost each other and the sense of where we were. So suddenly I said, we left Katie in the room. We ran back. And Katie was like a child on her bed, so scared. She said, she was almost crying. She said, why did you leave me here alone? I don't know the language. I don't know where I am. You abandoned me. And we realized what service and obedience and care mean. We had done our own thing. We had not served Katie. She was really afraid. But it is a fact that when the twins came with Dad, and I had a problem parking, and I said, well, it was evening, it was dusk, the same path. I said to Rustam, why don't you walk and see, and then come back, and we shall have dinner, da, da, da. He came back, and he looked like a ghost. He said, where were you? I was so scared. And there's nothing scary. There are villas, a little park, the sea. But it means, can I go on and on? I will, yes, because it's about fear. It means that places hold impressions. Not so long later, I don't know if you know the name Meredith Moon. She's a union analyst who has lived many years and has worked many years in Hawaii, in Maui. We became friends. And when she came, she was going to France for some reason. She said, I would like to come and see you in Assisi. I said, okay, I will come and pick you up in France. We shall drive to Portofino together and then drive down. So we did. As we left France, the road, the motorway that goes from France to Genova to Portofino is a very particular one because it's built right on the cliffs. So it's one tunnel, one piece of open, and then one tunnel, and then again. So if it rains, it's a danger. If it's sunny, you want to look out at the sea. It's hard driving. I was driving very carefully. We left France, and we had talked until then, as two women in a car can talk. She started going, and I said, what's the matter? She said, I don't know. We reached Portofino. She was in a state. She said, take me to the hotel. I'm in a strange state. We had little dinner. I said, okay, we'll see you tomorrow morning. In the morning, she said she had had a horrendous, vivid dream of violence in Portofino. She said, inquire. Let me know what happened here. So I went to the owner of the hotel, who was a strange character, always a little bit devious, can I say? Not open, with mother behind the scene. So I went to him and I said, you have lived here all of your life. Can you tell me what happened during the war? Oh, he said nothing. Nothing. His mother heard my question. So when I was in the garden, she came to me and she said that along that path and on the cliff, many young partisans had been tied up with barbed wire by the German and thrown down. Oh. Some of them machine gunned. So I have a feeling that Baba was clearing, through his dear ones, through Katie, who felt abandoned, fear of being in a place, through the twins. So that's one story. I have nothing to do with it. But the other story I've been asked to tell, which I think will connect some others that I've already said. I've been asked to say, how did I find out about Mehera Baba? How did he find me? I grew up, I was born in Rome, I grew up in Rome, and I left Rome when I married young. And I thought I was such a good girl, such a good Catholic, such a good wife, and such a good mother. Until the moment when I practically destroyed my life, literally. I told you before how Baba then reconnected the pieces. I was living then alone in a desperate situation. I was feeling unworthy of loving Jesus, who had been my God, of course, my connection to God. Totally unworthy. So I couldn't pray to him, I couldn't beg him. I was away from family, I was an outcast. So when my desperation reached the proper time, a voice came to me in English. And a voice that was an order. It said, go to India and be lost to yourself. Now, be lost to yourself, I knew from Christ what it meant. From the gospel, I knew enough of that. Go to India? I was desperate. I had no energy, nobody to ask. And I knew nothing about India at that time. But I had two friends, luckily. All the others had left. One was an English lady, married to an Italian count. Very lovely people. And they lived not too far from the woods where I was living with horses in a tiny little place. Tiny little house in an Etruscan place full of caves, magnificent, but wild. And every now and then, out of desperation and loneliness, I would drive to see my friends. And they would welcome me, even if I was so restless. I would stay a few hours and then run away. The Count, my friend, the Count, eventually died. And after a while, as I kept hearing the message, the order, go to India, be lost to yourself, wandering, my friend said to me, she was about to go to India with her father, who had invited her to join him on his last pilgrimage to this Indian guru that the people in the family knew about and didn't want to know, but she was going because she had been asked. And I begged her. I said, please let me come. She said, no. You change your mind too many times. You're not reliable. I can't. And so I had to make a real solemn promise that I would not break my promise. I said, please write to your father, ask him if I may join. Reluctantly, she wrote the letter. And the anxiety I felt as I was waiting for the reply made me understand that this was a lifeline, how much I cared for the reply, how much was it held, what importance. The reply came, and this gentleman said, okay, bring your friend to London, we shall meet her, and gladly we shall take her to Mehera. Now, some of you may know the name of Tom Hopkinson, perhaps? Well, Tom Hopkinson happened to be the father of my friend, the British lady, who didn't want to write the letter. So I arrived in London, met Tom and Dorothy Hopkinson. We had a nice dinner together. They thought I was to be taken to Mehera. Next day we flew towards Bombay. And as we were flying, Tom came to sit next to me And that was the first time I ever heard the name Mehera. He said, we are going to Mehera, Mehera. And I said, what is this? Oh, Mehera. So he explained to me a little bit what was happening, what was about to happen. And that's how I reached Mehera. The image in my mind is what you do with a kitten that you want to put, or a puppy when you want to put him out of the room, you pick him up and drop him exactly in the place. I was dropped in Mehera. But I was a Catholic, still inside. So Dorothy Hopkinson, who was the boss, so to say, in the family, she would say, Valeria, now you go and bow down as the others do. So my ego would say, and the others do. Bow down to whom? But I couldn't say no, because I begged them to take me to Mehera. So I was caught. I would go and bow down and say, I don't know who you are. I cannot revere you. I cannot, I don't know you. And I was feeling very bad. I was feeling treacherous. Can you say treacherous? I was feeling I was betraying Jesus. I was betraying my belief. Who is this? A tombstone? I'm bowing down. So, two conflicting weeks. In the meantime, my whole life was like familiar hell. There were lawyers, there was difficulties, emotionally difficult and physically difficult. On the last evening, I bowed down and I heard myself say, it just happened. I said, help. On the plane going back to Italy the next day, I started blaming myself. I said, what did you do? Whom have you asked for help? Who is this? I arrived in Rome, and things I tried to solve for years through, legal way, all of a sudden, bang, bang, things happened in ways that were whimsical, different, imaginative. And I said, that's how he caught me. Because he changed my life like that. He gave me freedom. I was caught in a tangle. Little by little by little, but I could see the solutions of problems I had not been able to solve. So, although I have never seen Mehera in the body, his beauty, his radiance, he has convinced me from within, and that to me is precious. But I have a story I want to tell, because it's Baba's humor about joy. One year, Shirin, Esfandiar, and a group with them, led by Jane Brown, came to Assisi. Do you remember Shirin? Yes. And we listened to Esfandiar, to the translation. There were mostly Irani people from Iran, but there were two Americans, one man and one woman. I can't remember exactly the name of the man, I remember his face. I remember Nancy, the woman. So we did this and that and the other, until we came to the last day. We went to the cave, came back to the hotel, and the next day we were all leaving at different times. I was going back to Rome, they were going back directly to Rome and then Bombay, to meet in Mehera for Amartiti. It was Amartiti time. So we have arranged everything, almost everything, when the young American comes to me and says, I've been to the cave, I have this deep desire, it's a real need to go back to the cave and meditate. But I'm leaving very early tomorrow morning, I cannot miss the flight. can you, Valeria, arrange for me a taxi driver who comes at the hotel in the center of Assisi at 4 in the morning to take me to the mountain, wait for me until I've done the meditation? I said, okay. I found the driver. 4 o'clock. The driver wanted me to promise solemnly that the client would not miss, would open the door of the hotel, that certainly he would not. I said yes. Having done that, we said to everybody goodbye. I left for my house to go to Rome next morning. Everything done. Next thing is, 2 days later, 2, maybe 3, I can't remember, I'm walking up towards the Samadhi, and I'm walking towards all the pandals and all the noise and the people of Amartiti on the hill. But I forget one thing. As I was driving towards Rome, as I usually did every time I have driven many hours. I love driving and I love moving. Even when I picked up Meredith Moon in France, when I was alone, I would speak to Baba. And I would say, Baba, Americans know so many songs. They sing for you so beautifully. I have no songs for you. But let me just sing this little tune to you. It's between you and me. I will never tell anyone. So I would sing to Baba my own tune to Baba. Dearly, friendly, like a friend. So I'm walking up towards a pandal on Mehera Hill. And I see a person come towards me waving, saying, Valeria, Valeria. And it's Nancy. We had left Assisi 2 days before. She comes, how did she see me? I don't know. She comes out of the crowd and she stops and said, let me tell you what happened at the cave. She said, well, going to the cave at night, when you cannot go through the official route, going through the hermitage and the path, that is difficult. We would have to jump over a wall and go over a very, very tiny, difficult path. So to go at night was not an easy thing, she said. It was really hard. We went slowly. We reached the cave silently, knowing that the friars were just about. The 2 men went inside. And I knew I didn't want, I knew they were meditating. I didn't want to disturb them. But she said, I'm not one who meditates. So I was sitting outside, eyes closed, thinking of Baba. And Valeria, all I could hear was, hey, mambo, mambo Italiano. I had to laugh because Baba was telling me he had heard my song, which was, hey, Baba, Baba Italiano. So that's a secret. That's a secret between Baba and myself. But to have somebody come to me, she was puzzled. She said, all I could hear, as much as I was trying to think of Baba, was, hey, mambo. So what can I say? What can I say? Mehera. We've been talking about Mehera. Mehera is a different person, gives different impressions, of course, to each one of us. And I hear she's the queen of the universe. She's mysterious. She's the innocent girl. She's this and that. At the time when I was in Mehera, I had a really difficult time with Mehera because I knew myself as, with all the load, what I was carrying on my life. And I knew my mistakes, I knew the burdens I had, the doubts. And she was so extraordinary, so innocent, so pure, that I had a hard time approaching her, being close to her. My hero in Mehera was Eruch. I was used to a patriarchal situation. I was used to men, father, 2 brothers, 3 sons, a husband, so men. But not only for that, Eruch was the great hero in my, I could hear his stories. But every time I would sit in Mandali hall, either Devana or someone else would come and say, Valeria, there's tea with Mehera, come, come. And so reluctantly I would sit and see Mehera be so totally sweet and taken by love. And I had no idea, no way of relating to that. So year after year, because I kept going to Mehera, year after year, I tried to get closer, sit close to her, but the connection was not so easy. And then one day, we were close to the Samadhi. She was in her best sari. She was going to offer flowers to Baba in the cabin. And Janet Jackson came to me. She gave me a little basket of flowers. She said, go in with Mehera and offer these flowers to Baba. So I went in. Mehera was incredible to me. She would stand in front. There are several photographs on the 3 walls of the cabin. Stand in front of Baba's photos. Look at Baba. Then pick one flower. Kiss the flower. Touch her heart. And then offer it to the photograph of her beloved. And I was mesmerized. I looked at her. I was at the opposite corner of the cabin, waiting with my flowers. And I'd been told by Mani, by Mehera, by Mani and the other ladies, why are you so sad? Valeria, why are you so sad? I was. So there I am in the cabin with Mehera, ready to offer flowers to Baba. All of a sudden, Mehera turns her head and winks at me. I said, thank you, Mehera. That was the last time I ever saw her. She winked, which meant, take it easy. Then Mehru came to Italy. Someone wrote to me saying, Mehru wants to come to Italy. She has 4 days. She wants to go to Venice, Portofino, Assisi. I said, 4 days? I said, impossible. At that time, I had grown a little bit. I could negotiate. And I said, well, she was going to fly from Switzerland. I said, well, maybe Zurich can give up 1 day and I can have an extra day. So she flew from Zurich to Venice. We had almost a full day in Venice, which was incredibly rich. It was just a few hours, really. She was dressed with a long skirt, with a bandana on her head, and a loose blouse, colorful. And she looked like a queen. She had that profile of a queen. We were walking in St. Mark's Square. St. Mark's Square, I don't know how many of you know, it's a huge square with St. Mark's at one end, and some long corridors, porches on both sides, music on one side, cafes on the other, and shops. So we were walking along one of the porches on one side. And Mehera, with her allure, she saw a jewelry shop. For some reason, she looked at it. We had little time, we were walking, but it was fancy, wasn't it? And she queenly walked in. I, being Italian, I could see the faces and the expressions of the girls serving in the shop. They thought, this is a gypsy. I mean, she looked exactly like a gypsy dressed with a long. So that was a moment of tension. She, she took no notice. She looked at what she wanted to see and walked out. And I had to bear the embarrassment. Then, in the afternoon, we flew to Genoa. From Genoa, we went to Portofino. From Portofino, the next day, we went to San Fruttuoso, which is near. It's a magnificent bay. We took the boat and went. But there were no special happenings. It was just all beautiful. Can I go back to Katie for a moment? Mm-hmm. Katie's time was a long time. I have 3 memories of Katie, small things, maybe 4. She was given a room in my farm for Paradiso, very rustic, really. She had a room, and Margaret Carpenter was sleeping next door to her with another girl, Sophia Gunther. Girl, she was a girl. Margaret was an adult. They told me in the morning that Katie's snoring was so incredible that the girl and the woman, couldn't sleep. So they tried to call Katie, and she would turn around and say, "Baba, snore some more." Finally, when they couldn't bear, it was 3 in the morning, they wanted to sleep. They had an alarm clock. They set the alarm clock close to Katie's bed. And the alarm clock went off loudly. And Katie jumped up. "Oh, Baba, Jay Baba!" Turn around and snore. Yes. But then, the last 2 days, we were in Rome, and there were 3 of us. Rusty Bostic, myself, and Katie. I had chosen a lovely hotel on top of the Spanish Steps, a beautiful place, where they could give us, they had known me over the years, they could give us like an enclosure of the hotel with 3 rooms with the same entrance, 3 different doors. So each one was separate, but we had a partition, privacy. She said to me later, "This is the very first time I've ever slept alone." But we were in Rome. I was driving in the traffic, and I said, "Katie, before you leave, would you please sing for us the 7 names of God?" I hadn't even finished asking, and she started singing in the middle of Roman traffic. The 7 names of God. Instantly. We went to the Vatican, to St. Peter's Square. At that moment, all the bells were ringing. All the bells were ringing. It was, you feel it in your body, not only in your head. And she said, "Oh, thank you, Bob." On the very last evening of her stay in Italy, I took her to the opera. And Rome has this magnificent Roman baths, huge buildings in brick that the Romans used for their hot and cold baths. What do they call it now? The spa. Magnificent. And they're being used in the summer for opera, open air opera. So the background is the umbrella pine, and that evening, the stars, the air was perfect. And they were giving Verdi's Aida, which is very colorful and beautiful opera. And all the good people, well dressed, elegant, outside. She looked like an 18-year-old. She was beaming, absolutely. Yeah. What if I have no more stories to tell? No, I have a story something about Francis. Francis was Francis was described by the story that followed his death as a sort of strict, simple man who wanted a hard life, poverty. But that was the church, the version of the church. What I know, what I've heard, what I've read is that, and I know exactly the place in Assisi, there is a palace, a building, a house that belonged and belongs to the bishop. So when he was dying, the bishop said, okay, come, I will give you a space so that you can be surrounded by your brothers, by your friends, by your companions. And so they came, they were all around him, they all knew that this was the end. And Francis would say to them, sing to me. And they would sing, strong, they were young men. Francis died, he was 44. So these were young, all of them. They would sing with their strong voices, and the bishop would say, no. What are you doing? The people of Assisi, they revere Francis. They're outside waiting to see what happens. And there you are singing. And they say, Francis wants us to sing. And they sang. Then the moment came when Francis knew his time was over. He was very sick, he couldn't see. And he asked his brothers to carry him down. Now here the bishop's place is in Assisi, in the old center. The Porciuncula, the St. Mary of the Angels that connects with Los Angeles, is down in the plain. And there's a long way to go down, especially when you're walking. So they have a stretcher, they put him on the stretcher, and they carry him down. There is one place halfway where Francis had worked much with the lepers, overcoming his disgust for the disease, for what happens to the people who had that illness, overcoming it in such a way that eventually he kissed and hugged the lepers and then served them. So there's such a place halfway down. And he said to his brothers, please turn me around. They turned him around. He couldn't see, but he knew exactly where his town was. And he gave a blessing. And there is a house at that spot that has a huge bronze placard with the words. And the blessing says, blessed be my town. You are sacred. Many people come from all over the world. Many souls will be saved because of you. Many men and women will come to serve God. So, if I go back to the story of the river of people walking inside Assisi, with this radiance in their eyes, with their exultance of feeling brothers and sisters, it's as if they had picked up exactly the sense of brotherhood and love. And the magnet that Assisi is for the people of the world, because I see it every month, every day, every week in Assisi. Families with little ones, they come, they walk in the rain. They come because Francis has lived there, because Clare has lived there. And as I grew up in Rome, but the roots of my family are in Umbria, in a place not far from Assisi. I grew up knowing. There was I'd always known about Clare and Francis. They were like the brother and sister, the saints, but they were one of us. When my mother was concerned about, I have two brothers. I had two older brothers. One was very good, one was a rascal. A nice one. So when the older one had examinations, or when the rascal one had car races, and she was afraid of the result, she would do what is called in the Catholic or Franciscan language a little flower, a fioretto. A little flower is an offering of the sacrifice to Francis. So she loved to smoke. She would give up cigarettes until the exam was taken. Or she would give up chocolate until my brother came home safe. And those are the little flowers. There is a book called Little Flowers of St. Francis, because the little flowers were the offering, the sacrifice that were done. Meru again. Meru came, that I had my farm, Paradiso number 40. And in my farm I lived with 2 horses. One male, one female, pure white, magnificent. And they were friends. They were companions to me. One Baba lover came, she looked and said, "Oh, you have Mehera and Mehera." The white horse. When my Meru come, she said, "Let's go, I want to meet your horses." So the female was sweet, she was gentle, she was obedient. The male was a stallion. He had been my child because I had fed him when he was his mother was killed and he was tiny, and he felt he was my child. He played soccer with my kids, and so he was beautiful and new. When Meru, and I have photos, Meru fed him prasad. She said, "Walden, this is prasad from Baba." He smiled. I mean, a completely different animal to me. I couldn't believe it. So I cannot see, but I'm glad. I'm glad. He's been very important in my life. He has lived, we have lived together, this 4-legged son of mine and myself, for 34 years.
Oh my God.
And he was still strong and agile and beautiful. But when his companion, he had already seen his mother die and then other companions along the way. When his last companion died, he gave himself death. It took him 3 days to die. He said no more. No more eating, no more drinking. He galloped himself to death.